Oral questions by members.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Keith Light is the latest victim of the Premier's housing failures. At 77 years old, this former construction worker has been trapped in a 2-year-long wait for a call from BC Housing that never comes. Keith's New Year's Eve was spent in an old RV, desperately trying to stay warm, as he, and I quote, just laid there and visualized BC Housing calling me and saying, "We have a place for you," end of quote. Now, we as the official opposition have been calling for 2 years now for this government to listen to the seniors advocate and fix the long wait lists that have exploded under this NDP government. I can tell you, BC United will certainly fix it. We'll update the Safer Rent Subsidies program immediately to reflect the current housing market and actually support our seniors. And so my question to the Premier is, the Safer Rent Subsidies have not changed for 6 years. Why is this Premier failing to help seniors who aren't getting the help they need while they sit stuck on BC Housing wait lists?
Here, here.
Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And the story of Keith is a challenging one for all of us. I've met in this role as Minister of Housing, unfortunately, too many Keiths. It's really hard to hear from people who are, whether they're have worked their entire lives and then find themselves on the verge of homelessness, or if they're a young family who's working full-time and can't find housing in their community and find themselves living in RVs. It's tragic. It's really difficult for me, but I do meet with folks and listen to them and hear from them about what the pathway is. How do we address this? We know, Honourable Speaker, we are 2 decades behind when it comes to investing in affordable housing. Governments decided that they didn't want to invest in it, that we would just leave it to the private sector alone.
Members.
Serious
Please
question. I'm
continue.
trying to give a serious answer. Governments believed that we could just step out of the way and let the private sector deal with it. Private sector has an important role, but it's going to require government investments. We've been making historic investments. Now, the member talked about SAFER. The member will know that when we came into government, SAFER was the funding was very low. We, in fact, increased the funding in 2018 by 48%. Now, the program serves 20,000 seniors in British Columbia. I think helps a lot of people. And we do acknowledge that it needs more reform. We have launched a review of the program. The review is complete. We're just going through the details of the recommendations. I met with the seniors advocate as well and shared with her my commitment, the shared commitment that we're going to continue to build housing, invest in housing, and support seniors as the challenges we're dealing with global inflation and the housing crisis continue.
Leader of the Official Opposition, supplemental.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, classic NDP, more reviews, more meetings, more emails, more bureaucracy, everything but actual results for the people that need that help today, right now. Here's the reality, Mr. Speaker. The seniors advocate, who's there to represent the interests of seniors and reports to this legislature, the seniors advocate says that BC seniors receive less support than seniors in any other province. In fact, British Columbia rates the worst in the country under this government. Under this Premier's watch, while he was the minister responsible for housing, overseeing BC Housing, the Crown agency responsible for this, the wait list for seniors subsidized housing has doubled. And despite running a record-setting historic deficit, the largest in the history of this province, in spite of doubling the provincial debt, in spite of the fact that they want to increase it by another 64% over the next 3 years, somehow this Premier couldn't be bothered to just increase the subsidies for our most vulnerable seniors. Seniors like Carol Fawcett from Vernon are being neglected by this NDP government. She says, and again, I quote, "It's absolutely disrespectful how seniors are treated by the government in that we don't even have enough to live with any dignity or respect." End of quote. How can this Premier continue to fail seniors who rely on the Safer subsidy program so badly despite running up the largest deficit in the history of the province of British Columbia.
Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And as I said to the member previously, when I said governments for 2 decades decided not to invest in affordable housing, perhaps he didn't realize I was talking about him and his party. For 2 decades, there was a decision made by governments not to invest in affordable housing. And so now...
Members, please.
It's recognized.
Members. Minister has the floor.
The level of affordable housing that was needed for the last 2 decades in British Columbia has not been built in communities throughout this province, Honourable Speaker. The member knows that. The member knows it. Oh, he doesn't know that. Oh, that's a surprise that the Leader of the Opposition doesn't know.
Members, let's have one speaker at a time, please. One person at a time. Minister will continue.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Perhaps to refresh the member across the way, the Leader of the Official Opposition memory, I'll send him a list of the projects that they cancelled, affordable housing projects they cancelled in 2001 in communities. In fact, my colleague here has one in his community as well. Now, Honourable Speaker, the challenge is real. We know that. We have seen our population continue to increase. We welcome people to British Columbia. But at the same time, the amount of housing has not increased. It's a real challenge. And we're not alone in dealing with this challenge. This is a challenge that's being dealt with by provinces across the country, jurisdictions across North America. Met recently with representatives from Ireland who are dealing with the same challenges. How are we responding, Honourable Speaker? We increased the SAFER program by 42% from what they were funding it, 42%, Honourable Speaker. We still have more to do. We're investing historic levels of dollars into building actually affordable housing that people can afford in our communities. We're unlocking housing, Honourable Speaker, by allowing 3, 4, 6 units on single-family lots. We're protecting our housing stock with a rental protection fund, Honourable Speaker. All of this work is on a pathway to address the challenge we have. We have a serious plan with Homes for People plan, Honourable Speaker. Unfortunately, I haven't heard anything serious from the opposition.
Member for Surrey White Rock.
Day after day, we see this Minister of Housing, time after time, misrepresent in this House, and it needs to stop, and it needs to stop today. At what point will this minister actually take responsibility for the utter failure we are seeing in housing today in British Columbia? Young families are seeing the dreams of home ownership disappear. And the Premier, he peddles a fantasy of government schemes and empty announcements to the rescue. His track record tells a different story. Whether it's the utter mismanagement and the scandals of BC Housing, which include mass board firings and the fatal fire we saw at the Winters Hotel, what do we see? We see a surge in homelessness of 34% in Metro Vancouver alone. That is this minister's record, this Premier's record, and they need to take responsibility for it. And now we see a damning new report called This Isn't Working. And it says homelessness will skyrocket a further 50%. Considering this Premier's dismal record, how can anybody believe what they are doing, including those making nearly $200,000 a year in terms of subsidies, will actually turn out any different when he has constantly failed those who are in dire need?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. We met with the folks who wrote this report. We acknowledge that there's still challenges that we need to address in the community, in the downtown east side, Honourable Speaker. But what they made clear, and perhaps if the members took time to meet with them before they asked this question, was that there was nothing happening for people in the downtown east side before we formed government. The level of action that was needed was not happening, Honourable Speaker.
Members, you will have the opportunity to come back and ask another question to correct if you feel it's not. No, hold it. Let's hear the minister. He has the floor.
if the members are serious about this question, I welcome them to go and meet with the people who wrote the report and hear from them about what they believe was the record of that party when they were in government compared to ours, Honourable Speaker. They will tell you that we've opened 1,400 supportive housing units in Vancouver since we formed government. They will tell you that we have either purchased or renovated 600 new SRO units in the downtown east side. They will tell you that we provide $11 million for the SRO Collaborative to support the most vulnerable people. They'll tell you that we're funding a brand new project of 103 homes for Indigenous people with Luma and First United. They will tell you, Honourable Speaker, that we are funding 170 homes and 80 new shelters with the Vancouver Aboriginal Friendship Centre, Honourable Speaker. I recommend before they ask questions about this report that they meet with the folks who wrote the report so they can get the true facts of what the challenges are.
Surrey White Rock supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll give this minister a number. It's the number 2. It's the number 2. That's 2 years without heat. That's 2 months without hot water. That is the situation at the Cedar Lane Motel. That is the situation this ministry has known about for over a month and a half. So when he talks about meetings, has he gone and met with the seniors at the Cedar Lane Motel to see the absolutely abysmal conditions they're living day in and day out? Minister, have you met with them? Because the answer is no, you haven't.
Through the chair.
So residents like Don McKay are living this day in and day out. They are forced in this situation. They get eviction notices based on permits that don't exist. The RTB knows this. The minister knows this. What do we hear from the minister? Nothing. We hear silence. So, to the Premier, to the minister, what is it going to take for him to get up and do his job so people like Dawn and the seniors at the Cedar Lane Motel aren't living in the absolutely abysmal conditions this minister has put them in today?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Every time I or my colleagues hear about an incident where people are struggling, where there's a challenge, we take steps to respond. Every single time. Now, the folks that are living in this privately owned motel had some serious concerns that came forward. The Compliance Enforcement Unit, which we created on our side to take proactive action, stepped in. They've taken steps to reach out to the owner, inform the owner of their responsibility to ensure there's hot water. They've also been given a permit by the City of Surrey for redevelopment of that project. Honourable Speaker.
Members, please continue.
The member is highlighting a private party that is not following their obligations to the renters. And if he is upset about that, well, then I concur with him. I agree with him. If he's upset about that, I'm upset about that as well. We have taken steps to use the Compliance Enforcement Unit to step in to inform this owner of this building that what they're doing with their tenants is inappropriate. I'm agreeing with the member. Now, the solution to the challenges, Honourable Speaker, is we have to unlock more housing supply in our province. That's what the legislation that we brought in last fall was about. We have to invest in direct, affordable housing, Honourable Speaker, which we're doing at a historic amount. We have to protect our existing housing stock. That's what we were doing in Esquimalt yesterday when we protected 16 homes for people who were about to be displaced because a private interest was going to buy it and jack up their rents. Honourable Speaker, all the steps we're doing is to address the challenges that the members laid out. And so we're going to continue to do that work because we know that every single person in British Columbia deserves to have a safe, affordable place that they can call home.
Thank you. House Leader of the Third Party.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under this Minister of Health, spending has increased from $18 billion when he took the office to $36 billion now. A year ago, the minister agreed to adopt minimum nurse-patient ratios. The minister told nurses that help was on the way. However, the experience of British Columbians trying to access health care and Stats Canada paint a different picture, Mr. Speaker, than the version of exceptionalism that we hear day in and day out. According to Stats Canada, there are nearly 5,500 vacant job postings for nurses across the province. BC nurses are here today. They want less announcements from the minister and more supports. More supports to retain nurses, including a provincially coordinated plan to address the systemic workplace health and safety concerns that have been raised over and over and over again. The minister's $36 billion healthcare system is in crisis, Mr. Speaker. What is his plan to retain nurses, and will he deliver a provincial plan to address the health and safety concerns he's known about and failed to solve?
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and we're doing just that. We're working specifically with nurses in British Columbia on the issue of nurse ratios, a historic commitment that we're putting into place, Honourable Speaker. In the last number of years, we've led Canada in new registered nurses, including last year, Honourable Speaker. The increase, Honourable Speaker, in the 12 months of 2023 was more than 6,000, Honourable Speaker. That has involved the increases we've made in nursing spaces, the improved pathways to internationally educated nurses, and the dramatic increase in number of spaces for nurse practitioner, more than double they were when I became Minister of Health. Honourable Speaker, finally, I would say with respect to the issue of health and safety, one of the key proposals by the BC Nurses Union, by the Hospital Employees Union, by the Health Sciences Association, by the doctors of BC, was to change the system of security in acute care. We said we'd do it. We said we'd hire 320 people in a year. We put in place a new relational security model, and we have delivered on behalf of nurses and others in BC.
House Leader, third party supplemental.
What's doubled is this healthcare minister's budget, and yet our healthcare system is still in deep, deep crisis. You know who is doing well under this minister, and that's private healthcare corporations. They're doing really well under this minister. One of the ways he's tried to address the shortage of nurses is through the expansion of agency nurses. The Premier wondered out loud recently, quote, how adding profit margin to the limited number of healthcare workers, how we have somehow improves services for people. It's a question that the Premier asked, and it's a good question from the Premier, and I'm wondering if he asked the Minister of Health right before jacking up his budget again this year. This Minister of Health is relying on agency nurses, adding cost to the system, and profit, Mr. Speaker, for corporations. Dispirited nurses, exhausted by the lack of support by this $36 billion minister, leave the public service to join the for-profit healthcare system. The result is a 400% increase in spending for agency nurses over the past 4 years to the $36 billion minister. We're seeing creeping privatization of healthcare under his watch. It appears to be his strategy. He's doing it with public money. When is he going to come clean and just admit that's what he's doing?
Minister of Health.
Honourable Speaker, the facts are the opposite, Honourable Speaker. The facts are the opposite. We have the largest capital building program in the history of the BC healthcare system. Every one of those projects, Health Authority owned and operated, Honourable Speaker. With respect to nursing, Honourable Speaker, we've increased 602 nursing spaces in British Columbia's colleges and universities. We've improved pathways to internationally educated nurses. We're leading Canada in new nurses, while other jurisdictions such as Alberta have lost nurses in the same period, Honourable Speaker. The fact of the matter is we are working with nurses as we worked with doctors, Honourable Speaker, to ensure that working conditions for nurses improve, that nurse ratios are put in place in British Columbia, and that we're adding nurses to our system. The facts say that, Honourable Speaker. The member can be opposed. The member is suggesting he's opposed to more money to pay for health care when we have 650,000 people across British Columbia. If that's what he's saying, I disagree with him, Honourable Speaker. I disagree with him, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker.
Members.
Talk about results. Leading Canada in new nurses. Putting in place, Honourable Speaker, we had around 300 nurse practitioners in BC when I became Minister of Health. We now have more than 1,000. That's important. That's a change. That's an increase. We led Canada in new registered nurses. Hasn't always been the case. There's one health minister who lost registered nurses. In the history of BC healthcare, that was the leader of the opposition. But we are leading Canada in new registered nurses, and we're going to continue to recruit, retain, and make life better for nurses in British Columbia.
House Leader of the Fourth Party. Members.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I've had the opportunity to speak at length with Melanie, the mother of Sophia, who tragically died. Melanie told me a bit about her daughter, Sophia, and I would want to share some of what she shared with me with the House today. Sophia was a fighter. She was a ball of energy and passion, and she had a way of speaking with people with incredible love and care to anyone, no matter who they were. She was the kind of person who wanted to help everyone. Mr. Speaker, Melanie told me that Sophia actually wanted to become a medical doctor so she could help British Columbia heal. Sadly, Sophia could not afford the debt, and she didn't have the ability to spend almost a decade at university. So she did the next best thing. She started helping with our most vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, every British Columbian deserves a doctor, and every child born in British Columbia deserves the opportunity to become one if they want to do so. My question to the Minister of Finance: what percentage of new spending on health in the 2024 budget is going towards allowing more British Columbian kids to become doctors so that they can help heal our province?
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. And of course, it would be, I think, wrong not to say how much everyone in BC feels for Sophia and for her family. I appreciate the member raising her story again in the legislature today. The way we get more doctors in BC is to add spaces in medical schools. We're adding 128 at UBC Medical School, and we're starting a second medical school, the first in generations in Western Canada at SFU in Surrey. The way you get more doctors is to increase pathways for internationally educated doctors, and we've done just that. 938 registered in 2023 alone. The way you get more doctors in longitudinal family practice is to work with doctors in BC and with nurse practitioners in BC. And this was a record year for longitudinal family practice and doctors. More than 708 doctors in longitudinal family practice in 9 months, Honourable Speaker. You work with people, you take steps to make workplaces better, you add primary care networks and team-based care, you increase spaces in medical schools, you improve pathways to international medical and for international medical graduates, and finally, Honourable Speaker, you respect doctors in their work, whether they're doctors in public health or anywhere else.
House Leader of the Fourth Party Supplemental.
Mr. Speaker, as we have heard in this House, the Leader of the Opposition was the one that made the cuts to BC's healthcare system that got BC's healthcare system to this point. In 32 years, there's been 16 years of incompetence by the Leader of the BC United and now this NDP Health Minister. When I talked with Melanie,
Members, shh, members, come to order, please. Members, no cross-talking, please. Member has the floor.
When I talked with Melanie, she told me that she had an infant son who also died due to delayed medical treatment. And she herself, like a million other British Columbians, does not have a doctor. BC's healthcare system has failed her twice, and she's deathly afraid it's going to fail her. I want to read from a post that Melanie shared on her personal social media, and I quote, "I find it odd to hear my name and things I've said,
Question,
along
member.
with my daughter's name, come
Member,
out
let's
in the
have a question,
mouths
please.
of politicians." You know, out of respect for a woman that has lost 2 infants, I think this House should pay attention to the words that she said. "I find it odd to hear my name of things I've said, along with my daughter's name, come out of the mouths of politicians who have not even spoken to me or acknowledged my letter to them. Our government of British Columbia has failed me twice, and it's despicable. I deserve an acknowledgement and an apology from a few people in our provincial government, the NDP Minister of Health, the Premier, Dr. Henry, and since he's used my comments, Kevin Falcon." End quote.
Question, member.
Mr. Speaker, my question to the Minister of Health: will you commit to formally apologize to Melanie and get in touch with her? And will you ask the Premier and Dr. Henry to do the same?
Minister of Health.
Well, Honourable Speaker, I'd say a few things in response. I don't think, and I just say to the opposition House Leader, I don't plan to take a long time, but I'm just going to say this really very solemnly. I understand that they have questions to ask as well. I just say that these are obviously, this is profoundly filled with grief, not just for Melanie, but for the whole community, right? And one of the things I think we owe in this matter is rigorous, independent investigation. One of the things we did in this House, Minister was George Habit, and I was the opposition critic, was work together to put just such processes in place so that independent information would be developed and shared with families in the first instance and with the community to make the healthcare system better. And I am absolutely committed to that, absolutely committed to going through a rigorous process of doing that, because I think that's really what we owe in these circumstances, which is the facts and a real effort to get at the truth and make things better. And that's what I'll continue to try and do. Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker.
Member for Kelowna, Michelle.
3 years have passed since the introduction of the Early Learning and Childcare Act. At the time, and the NDP called it a milestone that would, and I quote, confirm government's ongoing commitment to make childcare more affordable and increase transparency and accountability by requiring the province to produce annual reports on its progress towards building a universal childcare system, end quote. Yet 3 years later, not a single section of this legislation has been enacted. And the only things parents get are glossy NDP brochures, press releases, and rhetoric, not transparency or accountability. Simple question to the Premier. Why hasn't the Act been brought into force?
Minister of State for Childcare.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. We know that childcare is absolutely a vital core service that families need and rely on across the province, and it's also one of the largest expenses facing families today in the province, and so we have been taking action, Honourable Speaker. There are over 13,000 $10 a day childcare spaces in BC. We're on track to hit 15,000 by this spring. And also with the affordable childcare benefit, over 35,000 children and their families are supported monthly, so that lower middle income families are saving over $1,000 a month, Honourable Speaker. So there are many thousands and thousands of families who are experiencing $10 a day or less, and some families are not paying at all for childcare. We know that when the other side were in government, they treated childcare as a luxury, and they would do that again, Honourable Speaker. Our families in British Columbia cannot afford to go back. We will continue investing in building this new system of services.
Member for Caribou-Chilcotin.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Tourism and Sport has promised complete transparency and claims to know approximately how much FIFA 2026 will cost. So a simple question today to the Minister, how much is FIFA 2026 going to cost taxpayers in this province?
Government House Leader.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker, and thanks to the member for the question. I think most British Columbians are very excited about the idea that we're going to be hosting the world. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for us to host the world in a soccer match. I know that there are soccer fans on both sides, Honourable Speaker. When we first were putting a proposal forward for FIFA, we were hoping for 5 games. And much to our surprise and happiness, we now have 7. Now, with that additional 2 games, it means we have to make sure that we're prepared for the additional capacity that's needed. That's the work that's happening right now. Once we've done the analysis on what the additional games mean, what the cost will be associated, certainly we'll be making all of that public.
Member for Surrey South.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Under the NDP's watch, our streets have become a battleground. of gang warfare with gangs armed with deadly automatic weapons like those used in a recent shootout in a residential neighborhood of White Rock. The #1 funding source for these murderous gangs is the illicit drug trade, bolstered by diverted safe supply programs and the NDP-endorsed organizations like the Drug Users Liberation Front. Evidence of this is mounting as seen in a major RCMP operation in Campbell River, where police seized kilograms of fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine, and thousands of hydromorphone pills diverted from safe supply prescriptions alongside $30,000 in cash. Why does the Premier continue this taxpayer-funded drug trafficking that's putting money and guns into the hands of gangs?
Hear, hear.
Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I appreciate the question from the member. And what I can tell the members, I think the police forces and agencies in our province are doing an outstanding job in interdicting illegal drug trafficking, weapons, and other criminal activities and gang-related activities in our province. What I can tell you that there have been new initiatives launched to ensure that we are doing everything we can to interdict firearms coming across into our province, working closely with the federal government.
Member. Minister, continue, please.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I note the member started off by asking the question about the use of these firearms, dangerous firearms which put communities at risk, which we know are illegal in Canada and have come from across the border in the United States, Honourable Speaker. And what we as a province have been doing along with other provinces is advocating with the federal government to have tougher restrictions in place, to have more resources at our border to be able to do better inspections in terms of dealing with the interdiction of illegal firearms. And I can tell you that the resources that we have put in place to assist police in their investigations have been paying dividends. We have seen significant drug busts in the last number of months, Honourable Speaker, that have seen arrests and convictions and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of drugs seized that will no longer be on the street, Honourable Speaker. We are taking action and we will continue to do so.
The bell ends question period.